Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly brought to you by Ravens Recruitment, Australia's pharmacy recruitment agency, spotlights the myriad of career paths available to pharmacists. Your host, Christy Lee Patterson, and her esteemed guests will be sharing invaluable career advice that you can implement at any stage of your career journey.
I'm Christy Lee Patterson, and today we're exploring the world of rural pharmacy with a very special guest, Shaylee Mills. Shaylee is an early career pharmacist who has worked across community pharmacy and Aboriginal Health Services in some of the most remote regions of Australia. She's also the creator of the Rural Pharmacists, a social media platform where she shares her day-to-day life and empowers other pharmacists to join the rural health workforce. Shaylee is also the PSA's National Intern Pharmacist of the Year for 2022. Shaylee, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
No, I'm just as excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem. Now, let's just start at the beginning. You, very much like myself, actually grew up in a rural town. And so I imagine that's played a big role in shaping your passion for rural health. So I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about what that was like, and has that actually influenced your career path at all?
Of course. So I grew up in a wheat belt town in Western Australia. So if anybody that doesn't know what the wheat belt is, it's a strip of farming land that sort of spans up from around about Kalbarri and then go all the way down to Esperance. So it's this big farming region, and I grew up in a little town called Quirity. So my parents are farmers, like most of the people that live there. It's a very small town, about 1,000 people. In my primary school, my class of 14, and that was it. So very tiny little community, and it meant that there was also no high school. So I had to go to boarding school to complete year 12. And interestingly, it was that move to Perth where I was like, I'm not going back rural. Like, I've done my time there. Like, I'm happier in the city now. This is where all the opportunities are. Like, this is where my people are now. So I thought I was going to stay. And I think it wasn't until I got a little bit older and I was going through the pharmacy degree, I had the opportunities to travel WA, mostly up north, especially during COVID when we couldn't leave the state. Everyone was going up north, and student placements as well. And I realized that I actually absolutely loved it. It was a new experience compared to what I'd grown up with, but it still reminded me of that community sense and that feeling of belonging. And it felt like home away from home. So I think in the end, that's how it's encouraged me to go back rural. But yeah, that's my story there, I guess.
I can definitely relate to that. It's funny, growing up in different rural and regional areas, I couldn't kind of wait to get out. And then after I did,
you're like, let me leave, let me branch out.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. And then, I ended up actually deciding to do university at Charles Sturt University because it was close to my hometown and my parents' property. So I can also relate to that, but I cannot relate to the boarding school part. I always wondered what that would be like attending boarding school.
Yes.
Now, I guess moving from boarding school to choosing pharmacy as a degree and then moving to that Kimberley region after your university, was there something that actually triggered you to say, yes, I actually want to head back there? Or was it just happened to be where an intern position was? What actually made you make that decision?
Yeah, so I guess it's a bit of a mixture of different things. I definitely really value the independence that I got going through boarding school because, I went there in year 7, so I was 13. And that's a big adjustment at 13 years of age. All of a sudden, you're not with your parents anymore. You're also living, I'd never lived in a city. I've been to Perth, but obviously I'd never lived there. So completely different. And that's a huge shift. And you learn a lot of things as well as growing up at the same time. But in terms of moving to the Kimberley, it was actually a holiday that I had taken to Broome in particular with my partner. And we hopped off the plane when we were visiting there. And literally that same day, we were like, we're going to come back here someday and work. Like, this is fabulous. We loved it. I don't know, it was beautiful. And then along my university journey, I heard about this particular type of job that was very rotational. You could go between community, hospital. They'd fly you around to different locations if they needed to. And it sounded awesome. It sounded like the best parts of pharmacy in all areas, really. So that's sort of when I had my eye out on that job, and I reached out to see if there was internships available, which there were. But yeah, I think it's that whole experience of moving out of home early. Once I finished high school, I had to live out of home on my own for a little bit to start university. And so I think, yeah, that independence that I gained, the understanding of what it's like to be alone and to also, I guess, be a little bit homesick or miss your people, and understanding how to manage that sort of really helped me to go on that journey. So, yeah.
What you just described there with that intern position, that actually sounds amazing. Like, wow, I
Yeah,
wish
it
I
was so much fun.
could have had that experience. Like, wow,
Yeah.
especially for an intern position, that just sounds like an absolute dream.
Yeah.
That was in Fitzroy Crossing.
Yeah, one of the locations that I got to was Fitzroy Crossing Hospital. And yeah, I think still to this day, the experience itself has to be one of my most favourite times working in rural pharmacy. So Fitzroy Crossing, for anybody that doesn't know, is a 4-hour drive from Broome, and then Broome again is a 2-hour flight from Perth. So it's literally in the middle of nowhere. So you're very isolated, but because of that, you come in to work in a little healthcare setting, which is the hospital, and that acts as an emergency department, a little ward, but it's also where people come to see the GP. They'll see allied health. There's an outreach component, and there's also the community pharmacy. And within that, the community pharmacy works with the hospital on the ward side as well at the time that I was there. So yeah, you become a community member. Like, you're the new person in town. People want to know who you are, what you're doing. They invite you out. They get you involved because there's not much else otherwise. But it was so much fun. And I think there's this misconception that all the time in rural pharmacy, you're alone or you might be the only pharmacist, which definitely does happen. But at the same time, that's not always the case. You know, I actually got to have a lot of time in Fitzroy Crossing with some of my best friends that I made working in the Kimberley. So yeah, it was just a really cool time working and living with your best friends. My partner was there. We were just having a grand old time out there. Yeah.
No, that sounds awesome. I mean, I think sometimes, yeah, like rural, regional, or even like remote actually places can be, I guess, a bit lonely. But when I was working in a small town of Forbes, there was actually a small community of other young health professionals there, and
Yeah.
they kind of, the owner there at the pharmacy kind of connected us all together, and it was really nice. So there was like the psychologist, medical student, and the pharmacist, and we'd go and have dinner and stuff together, which was really nice. So I think connecting with other health professionals.
And that's the beauty of it, because you don't do that very often in pharmacy in like a metro area. You know, we are a little bit isolated, I guess, in the pharmacy, and even in big tertiary hospitals, you know, we've got your whole pharmacy team, so you stick together. But in these rural places, you work with everyone, you see everyone socially. So yeah, you all kind of become friends over a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's a small area, small town, so everyone gets to know everyone. Yeah. So you've talked a lot about the area, the community during your internship, but I know you've also mentioned you've been quite open, I guess, in the public arena around post-internship burnout. And so even if I reflect on my own internship, it is quite stressful and quite demanding. You're all of a sudden having to work full-time and study, and I don't know.
And just that pressure.
Yeah, I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, if I fail, like my life is over.
You think it's going to be over otherwise, like this 5 years up to one moment. Yeah.
So, yeah, what was that experience like for you? So when you talk about that internship burnout, was that something that you actually experienced personally?
Yes. Yeah. So that's why I talk about it, or I try to talk about it on my socials, because it is something that I experienced personally, and it went through after I left my internship and began working as a pharmacist now in the Pilbara, the 777 team. So it sort of carried out for a period of quite a few months. And with sharing that experience online, I've come to find that there's a lot of the young pharmacists who have either gone through the same thing, currently going through the same thing, or worried that they might be getting to that point. So it's actually a lot more common than a lot of us think it is, or we feel like we're going through it alone, but we're actually not. There's actually quite a few of us, because it is a huge year and there's a lot of pressure, and you're going through life as well. Like, there's a lot of compounding factors as to why burnout happens. But for me, that looked like questioning entirely whether I wanted to be a pharmacist, which is very strange for me to say now, because I love being a pharmacist and I wouldn't choose my career path any differently. But at the time, I was fully thinking, like, what am I doing? Do I actually want to be doing this anymore? And it's very confusing to go through that whilst at the same time being exhausted, and you don't really know what you want to do. And you've spent, high school working towards the end, and then university working towards graduating, and then internship, you finish that, and all of a sudden that safety net is gone. What do you do next? What's the next thing that you're working towards? How do you get there? Where do you start? What am I even passionate about? And all of those things are going through your head, and it can kind of compound all at once. So yeah, I guess to overcome that, it was actually learning how to come back down to zero. I am very much the type of person, like, I do like something to work towards. I do like moving towards that next thing, something that excites me. And, you know, we all want some sort of fulfillment through our job, but you have to learn that being a pharmacist is not the only thing that you do, and it's not what makes you up as a person. And so, yeah, it was coming back down to zero, learning how to literally just go to work and come home and not do anything else. I don't need to worry about what I'm going to be doing next and what I should be working towards. Just literally finding myself and finding hobbies and learning how to be a normal person outside of work, because then all the exciting stuff and the little projects and the opportunities, they often find their way to you organically, and that's what makes them special. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that and being so open about your experience. And
yeah, of course.
I also just want to say also hats off to you for realizing this so early as well and figuring out how to overcome it. I feel like I've only just kind of had that same realization, but only in the past few years. So yes, I'm very, very proud of you for realizing that early on.
But it also definitely is a testament to like the team that I work with now as well. You know, they're so supportive in that journey. It definitely isn't just, you know, you don't have to go through it in isolation. I had lots of wonderful people around me at work still to this day who have helped me go through that. And yeah, they've been super important.
That's so good. And I like the way that you said going back to zero. I think that's a good reflection to have just in life in general. I think realizing that, yeah, like just because you're a pharmacist, it doesn't have to be your personality.
Yes, yeah.
And I think reflecting on my own journey, probably when I was sort of in that same position as you are now, I thought that, yeah, me being a pharmacist, like that's who I am and that's basically it. And I used to say, oh yeah, being a pharmacist, it's a lifestyle and it's not a job, and which it can be a really great lifestyle, don't get me wrong, but I think then it's very easy to blur lines then, and you talk about
definitely
being able to find hobbies and being able to separate going to work and coming home. And I think that's really important. And if you start blurring those lines, it's very easy to just, I guess, get into that, I don't know, rat race of,
Yeah.
You talked about some of your hobbies and how just things just pop up, I guess, organically and randomly when you're kind of giving yourself maybe that time to be also creative as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And so is that sort of when the idea of the rural pharmacist came about for you? Is that something that you thought strategically, okay, I want to do this? Or was it just like a natural progression of you were just sharing some of yourself and then that's just grown into what it is now?
I hadn't really thought of it that way, but in reality, it's kind of a mixture of both. So I think it happened organically in the sense that I've been very fortunate that for the most part, every job that I've had in rural pharmacy, I've absolutely loved the experience and the job itself. And I've always thought, you know, I love all these things and I know other people would really enjoy this as well. But a lot of what I've learnt has been because I've taken the job, but I've just learnt about it on the job in terms of the possibilities and the opportunities and the growth and the benefits and things like that. And conversely, some of the hardest days in my career have been in rural pharmacy because of significant workforce shortages. So I've always questioned, like, why at university, on a university level, closer to my internship, was I not really made aware of a lot of these things? Because that's a significant gap for ECPs because there'd be more of us, I believe, anyway. So that's a question that I've always had. And then I guess through finding my hobbies, I started posting hobbies online anyway. So I got used to like putting together little videos and reels and TikToks. And a long time ago, I was actually working towards becoming a dancer. So most of it was around dance or funny little things like advent calendars that I was opening at Christmas time, and some of those TikToks sort of gained traction and things. So that's when I sort of started experimenting in that stage. And then a very good mentor of mine, Dr. Faye Sim, she turned to me one day and she was like, you know, the perspectives that you have on rural pharmacy, they're actually quite valuable. Like you should start putting them out there. I think she was thinking more LinkedIn, and at the time Twitter or X was still sort of thriving, which it's not so much anymore. But
yes,
in my head, it was Instagram and TikTok because the reels and, where lots of our generation are now. So I guess that's how it all sort of started. So it started organically and then turned into somewhat strategic. But I think because I had that moment to sort of rest, like you say, bring it back down to zero, that I had the space to then think about it strategically and work on it strategically since. Whereas if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have the capacity at all to take that on. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. And yeah, I guess shout out to Faye if you're listening. I'm sure she is.
Yeah.
And
absolute
I think
legend.
that's also important to highlight that if you're a more experienced pharmacist that's quite prominent in the industry, just little comments like that you can say, like just using that experience that you had, it has a power to really change people's perspectives and their trajectories. And so, who knows what she envisioned, like you said, when she mentioned that to you, but look at how it's
evolved.
Which is really exciting. And I like that the fact that you did choose the Instagram and the TikTok. Just the way I said that makes me sound like an old... like the TikTok, the Facebook.
Don't worry, we've all done it.
Yes, but I think it also shows that authenticity, which is really important. And I'm quite proactive on LinkedIn, and I think there's a really good place for LinkedIn professionally.
Yes.
But I do feel that it's probably like still the best parts of you or whoever it is.
Correct.
Although I am seeing that people are starting to change that and being more authentic on there, which is great. But I think I know when I've watched your reels and things on TikTok and Instagram, I just love that you're so authentic. And so even though you said that some of the things that you do are strategic and you've got to plan these things, that sometimes you can't just put it...
Yeah, as much as I'd love it for it to be ad hoc, like it just, especially in pharmacy, it really can't. In health in general.
You have a life and a job and
But yeah, no, thank you for that.
No, that's okay. And I think that's probably why a lot of people feel like they can connect with you. And it's actually funny, I was doing a locum stint in far north Queensland, Priceline Pharmacy in Mareeba. And I met a pharmacy assistant there. Her name's Jordan. And shout out, if I ever interviewed you, that I would shout out to her.
Well, hello, Jordan.
When we were chatting, she mentioned to me that she had came across this really awesome pharmacist that she follows on Instagram. And she's like, maybe you've heard of her. And she showed me the account and it was your account, Shaylee.
Oh, that's very sweet.
So I think
thanks, Jordan.
That even, like, I don't know if you realise, but like even pharmacy assistants are engaged with your content. And I think that's because you're authentic.
Because it's not just about pharmacists, it's a whole pharmacy team. We will use any staff that we can get our hands on in these areas. And assistants are essential to the functioning of our day-to-day work, and we can't do half of what we need to do without them. It's almost even harder to get assistants in these areas because unless they live there and move there, then there's not much other option. So thank you for letting me sharing that story. I appreciate that.
No, that's okay. I thought I definitely will, give the shout out. But
yes,
I think
now I've got my eye out for Jordan. So
yes,
good
keep
on
an eye out for Jordan. If you're listening, I kept my promise. But I think too, in some areas, I know that some of the places where I locum, so quite often like going to, I guess, random places, especially North Queensland. And quite often some of these pharmacies pretty much just run on locums. They might maybe only have one full-time or regular pharmacist. And so in terms of like pharmacy assistants, a lot of the time they're actually the ones that are the regular staff.
Yes.
And they know what's going on. They know the patients. And so I know I really value the dispense techs and pharmacy assistants give to me as a locum. So if you're an assistant and you're listening, yes, I value
out to you guys.
Shout out. I guess talking about stories and testimonials, have you received any feedback from anyone that's maybe engaged with your platform or have you got any success stories or testimonials you'd like to share?
I do actually. And this is where I can really say that I'm so grateful for those that have followed along and the community that's sort of formed now, because it's just fantastic. Because I have a lot of people that message me quite regularly about, how maybe what I've said or what I've put out there or what I've suggested and created is like how it's impacted them or how it's made them feel or a different perspective that they didn't see before, or even if that post just came at the right time that they needed to see that. It happens so often, and I always really appreciate those messages, because sometimes you really do feel like you're just throwing things out there, seeing what sticks. And so it's really nice to know that a lot of it is resonating with people who are going through the same thing as me, because it's, I share my journey, but I also love hearing about other people's and knowing that I'm not going through it alone either. So I'm really grateful for everybody that's reached out to let me know of their thoughts. But it goes even further than that. So even just here in Karratha, we've been super lucky that together with the socials as well as the team working towards the placement program that we have here, and the intern program that we're also starting to develop even more, we've secured multiple interns for 2025, which is fabulous for somewhere that's so remote. And we've even already gained interest for 2026.
Wow.
So even that forward planning, that's huge for us. And I think any rural area would just be absolutely thrilled that they could get their hands on so many people or interest so early, because we're always looking. And, students and interns are our main way to recruit, because that once you get them, that's when you can show them on site, like what it's actually like and how much fun it is and all the opportunities and they usually come back and stay and whatnot. But one that definitely comes to mind at the moment is I've actually got a young high school student local here who came into the pharmacy, and she tracked me down and she let me know that she'd seen some of my content. And from that, she's just been watching the videos, and now she was really considering actually studying pharmacy as soon as she graduated high school. And she came back again like last couple of weeks and said, finished my WACE exams, like it's all done, and I've put pharmacy down as one of my preference, and even considering like doing some work here in Karratha. And I think that's so special, and it magnifies it on a scale, because not only have we got more interest in a remote area, but someone that's local as well. Like that's just even better. That's exactly what it's all about. It's getting people interested and wanting to try it out, because once they want to try it out, then it's easier for us to be able to be like, here, like this is what we'll give you and provide you and support you to. We want to give you all the support so that you can support us and our community. And that's really what it's about. So
That's such an amazing story. And that's something that I probably haven't even really thought about as much is targeting high school students or...
Exactly. And I didn't think of it like that either, but that happened so organically. And I think that, that was really special.
That's really, really nice. And especially someone local in your area, that's really sweet. That's really, really nice. And it kind of opens, if more pharmacists also share their experiences and being more open and authentic about it, then future pharmacists, they're actually seeing more of what that experience is, rather than just them maybe being in the pharmacy with their parents or something, picking up a script and not really understanding what else that can actually be done. Because I guess when you're young, you don't really spend much time in pharmacies. I know.
No.
I don't know if I've shared this before. I actually got my first job in pharmacy because I went with a friend to get her ears pierced. That was actually the reason why I
love that.
So I was just tagging along, and they needed someone, and so I was like, I'm available.
There you are. And here you are all these years later.
And here I am all these years later. And it's funny, I was having a conversation with my mum not that too long ago, and it's funny, she's like, oh, who would have thought that you didn't want to be a pharmacist? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, oh, remember I suggested pharmacy when you were in high school and you shot me down for it. Thinking, no, I don't want to do
You're
that.
Like, absolutely not.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't remember saying that. But I think it was when I reflected on it, I think, it's probably because I didn't understand what they actually did.
If you don't need to engage, I guess, because you're healthy otherwise, it's definitely not something that you see. And we are a small industry, I think, and, even as a young person, every young person has to see a doctor or a physio, for example. So we all know what they do. But in terms of pharmacy, it's probably a little bit less, because they may not necessarily need medication or that sort of health advice. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I might just turn the conversation over a little bit, but it's still kind of relevant to what we were chatting about. You were mentioning about the intern program that you're working on with 777, I believe.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I guess you've been recognised for your work as an intern, being named the PSA's National Intern Pharmacist of the Year in 2022. So first of all, congrats on that achievement. That's pretty awesome.
Thanks.
And I guess in terms of like winning that award, for maybe people that are students or interns now, what did you actually have to do to win the Pharmacist of the Year? I'm sure it's just like you were just being yourself, I'm sure, but
pretty much, yeah.
What did you actually have to do for that?
Yeah, again, as I said, that's the beauty of it, because you really are just being yourself, especially in rural pharmacy. But because of the lack of health resources, what you do and what you try to achieve or can achieve with that lack of resources is so impactful for that reason. But I guess that particular year that I was an intern was when WA opened its borders for the first time in 2 years. And I was working in the Kimberley. So basically, in that region, the whole health system worked so incredibly hard to make sure that obviously there's going to be an influx of COVID-19 back in the state, because up until then it sort of had been kept quite at bay. So we really were kind of going through it for a second time in that sense to keep communities safe. And, you know, everybody that worked towards keeping people safe did such a fantastic job. But I guess the main things were I was doing a lot of vaccinations for COVID-19, because at the time WA interns can vaccinate, which that might be a sort of whole Australia thing now, which is fabulous. But I was doing a lot of them, and it was also a time when I'm not sure I think it was a state thing as well. So WA, if you wanted to go into certain restaurants or certain areas, if you wanted to go to work, you had to be vaccinated. It was mandatory. So that was a big time, and that caused a lot of people a lot of stress, understandably. Like, we'd never been through that before. So it was a case of people coming in, they're getting their vaccination. A lot of people are under stress. So I just pretty much just started asking people how they were feeling or how they were going during that time. It was just an instinctive thing to ask, like, okay, like, there's a lot of people who are really stressed, upset, or going through a lot and really unsure. Like, I've got their full attention. I may as well ask about what's going on for them. So yeah, it was kind of like a little mental health screening situation, I guess, that I just started to do. And that was sort of the main basis of the award nomination, which again, that was from Dr. Faye Sim, which is very appreciative that she'd put that in for me. So yeah, that's sort of the basis of that. So it really is just being yourself. And if you've done something that's, you know, gone out of a little bit further out of the way, or you've had a really good idea, if you've got a mentor around you that recognizes that and is willing to, you know, put forward that recognition, that's sort of how it gets through. So yeah.
That's such a nice story. And the fact that it was just something that you were doing naturally, right? It's not something, again, that you sat down and thought, oh, okay, I want to win Intern of the Year. What project do I need to do?
You honestly don't have to be strategic about it. It really, maybe in a metro setting, I mean, I could be wrong, and I haven't worked in a metro setting for a while because I've been rural pretty much ever since I took my internship. But I do feel like in a rural setting, if you can just go and do anything. If you've got a good idea, you just tell somebody and they're going to be like, yeah, go for it, because resources are limited. There's nothing to lose. No one's going to stop you. There's no policy, procedure, or anything like that might maybe slow it down. Whereas maybe that could be the case in a more metropolitan setting, especially in a big company or tertiary situation. So yeah, it really is just being yourself and just putting your best foot forward, and that can send everything right up. So yeah.
And even just showing genuine care. So that's essentially what you did. You were just being genuinely caring to these people that are coming and getting their COVID vaccines, and just started out by having a chat. And then that's sort of how it progressed. So I think
that's my number one piece of advice. Well, actually, I have lots of number one pieces of advice, but that's a piece of advice that I can give to young pharmacists and interns is just be curious. And if you can spend most of your time just starting conversations about anything, doesn't matter what it is, I think that's the best thing that you can do to build rapport and also get good ideas, because you'll see the gaps then.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really, really good advice. So you said that you had all this other advice as well. So I guess maybe we can start talking about that.
Yeah. The main things would be put yourself out there as soon as you can or as early as possible, even at a student level. Take the opportunities that come up, again, early as possible, because I do believe, at least in my experience so far, opportunity taking is easier when it's done earlier than later, when you've got a lot of other things or life going on. Network as soon as you can. I wish I had started networking earlier, but networking is half the reason why I've gotten to the point that I have today. And then particularly when it comes to rural pharmacy, if you ever get the opportunity, especially if you're considering it, what are you waiting for? Like, you've already done half the job. Just go and do it, right? Again, the earlier the better, or the earlier the easier. And I don't think I've met a single person who's had a rural experience and regretted it. And so I don't think that any of the young pharmacists would either. You'd be so surprised at how your perspective will change, the skills that you develop, how quickly you develop them, how broad your experience can be. Yeah, I just don't think there's any point waiting on it. So if you needed a sign to actually take that leap and go rural, then I'm giving it to you. But yeah, those are a few things that I've got up my sleeve that I think have been instrumental to where I've gotten to today, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the thing that you're talking about, network. I know people in the industry talk about that a lot and what actually is that and what it means. But when I almost had to laugh when you said, oh, I wish I'd started earlier. You already did start quite early.
I did start early, but I think,
because I know I wasn't really interested in networking or anything like that when I was a student. I was just wanting to get the bit of paper, really, to be honest. And I decided to join my student committee in fourth year because I wanted to have a say on where we went for the graduation end of year event, which
that's so
I
good.
know that's probably not the best kind of intentions, but I did start to open my eyes up as to what else and the impact they can have. And
yes,
I think if you're a student now, connect with your student group or university group. And if you are in a university that maybe isn't as, I guess, active in your student group, then reach out to NAPSA. I think being connected with NAPSA can just open so many doors for young pharmacists. And I've seen people that have had some form of interaction with NAPSA, like not even necessarily sitting on the board or as an executive on NAPSA, but just going to events where that NAPSA hold. And that's how you can connect and network with other pharmacists. And I know that I've seen young pharmacists kind of leapfrog in their careers quite quickly because they've had those connections early on. And so it just makes it a little bit easier. You still have to do the hard work and take those opportunities, as you say, Shaylee.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. When you're earlier in your career, you generally don't have as many, I guess, life requirements, I guess. Like you might not have young families. You might have the freedom to be able to kind of, I'm just going to go rural and
you might have a little bit more time up your sleeve.
Yeah, a little bit more time up your sleeve. And what's the worst that can happen, right? Well,
exactly.
Yeah, you can always come back or go do something else.
It's all good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just go home. So, I think that's really, really good advice. And even for pharmacists that have even been around for a while and maybe haven't had a chance to go rural, what you're thinking about it, even consider doing some locum stints. Yeah, most places are screaming out for locums.
As you said, you've done a couple. They're always looking.
Always.
And it's a perfect way as well to see the rest of Australia, and especially for my WA people. WA is incredible. Like, I never really fully appreciated how amazing our state is and how different every bit of our region is and what it has to offer until I went out here. And I think it's just wonderful if you take the opportunity to use it as a little working holiday. Like, you could go anywhere. You can go to the islands. Like, it just sounds so much fun. Why wouldn't you do it? Yeah.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Like, why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Do yourself a favour and go and be like somewhere. Even if it's like over Christmas, I know that now is the time to get a taste of being a locum. And the pay is actually pretty good as well. So that's always a win-win.
And everyone's in the Christmas spirit. So
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I think WA is a special place. I've had the pleasure of being in WA for just a short period of time. I think it was about 6 weeks. I went to WA and went to Geraldton and Mount Magnet as part of my university placement. So that was really cool. Absolutely loved it. And I'd love to see some more of WA. So my husband and I have that on our list of places we want to go. And I've seen these amazing pharmacies that you work at over there on your
they're very beautiful, aren't they? Who would have thought?
Really beautiful. I can definitely see
kudos to the owners there. They've done an amazing job. Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, shout out to them. If you don't know who we're talking about, I believe it's a 777. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. Pharmacy 777.
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful. There's some beautiful
really
ones.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's very nice walking into work every day and you feel like you're in this luxury pharmacy, which who would have thought, that you'd find it in the Pilbara red dirt. So, yeah.
Very special. But I do find that actually there's some really beautiful pharmacies, and not just aesthetically pleasing either, but just they're designed really well. The workflow is great staff, great people.
And forward pharmacy tends to be quite prominent.
Yes.
Which is a type of practice that I don't think once you start working in that way, you can't go back, because the reward for you as a pharmacist, but also what you can do for your patients by spending more time at the front instead of in the dispensary and flipping it in that sense. Yeah, it's really meaningful.
Oh, it really is. I know I struggle when I have to stay in the dispensary and I get told, Christy, come back in and you need to check these scripts. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll come back.
It's like, I wanted to talk.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But I guess that kind of ties into my very last question that I wanted to ask you. What's your vision? What do you think you see the future of pharmacy looking like?
The future of pharmacy, I think, is very exciting, especially in rural pharmacy, because not so much that it's a vision, because it's definitely achievable now, but I think maybe in the future more pharmacists will realise that anything is possible in rural pharmacy. There's no limit to what you might want to do or what you can achieve or how far you can go, and it can really take you the most random of places and career choices later on down the track. But I think within that, I hope that the recognition of pharmacists as a vital aspect of our healthcare system, especially in rural pharmacy, and not so much that that's not already what's happening, but just a wider understanding that we really are a vital aspect of the system, especially in multi-disciplinary teams. I think if we can start embedding further into that teamwork aspect, especially working on site in clinics or Aboriginal Health Services, I think that's a really great step towards the future. So it's all very exciting and it's constantly changing and it will change forever. But anything is possible.
I think that's the best way to end the conversation, is that anything is possible. Absolutely love it. It sounds almost like a Disney movie or something like that. It was very inspiring.
Yeah. The little sparkles popping up over top.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and insight, Shaylee. I've really, really appreciated it.
Thank you for having me. No, I've loved chatting with you.
For our listeners, you can follow Shaylee on social media at The Rural Pharmacist to stay connected and inspired. We'll have all the links in the show notes. So Shaylee, thank you again for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to our listeners that have been tuning in. And Shaylee, do you have any final words you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, my final words are that negativity can be quite loud. So make sure that you find the places or the people that give you the positivity, because those are the areas that will make the world of difference. And it's important to balance that.
Oh, amazing. Best way to finish, I think. That was really, really good. Absolutely loved it. Well, thank you so much, Shaylee. And hopefully we'll get to speak to you again soon.
Yes, hopefully.
You've been listening to Your Pharmacy Career podcast, brought to you by Ravens Recruitment. Don't miss our next episode, where we continue to explore the multifaceted world of pharmacy careers. Make sure to subscribe and share.